Welcome back, listeners. It's another week and another Arts and Crimes. I'm your host, Kelly.
It's Brandon.
This is Josh.
And we're here for the...
That was it. That's
That
all
was
you
it.
said.
That's all you get to say.
And this is Josh coming at ya from
Coming
the
at
basement.
Yeah, so we're here for the very exciting part 2 of King Arthur. So, there we go. Also, this is our first time recording during the day instead of incredibly late at night. So, Josh will either be not funny at all or I don't know.
We're going to find out the source of my power today, I guess.
Yeah, if it's exhaustion or what it is. No pressure. If you don't want to be funny, you don't have to be funny.
I feel the pressure. I must be funny. Or what am I? What good am I to the world?
I mean, how does that make you feel, Josh?
What part of it?
About this expectation for you to be funny.
How does it make me feel?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. It's nobody is on all the time. I live in constant fear of disappointing the people around me.
Like Sleep
I mean,
Token.
that's fair. That's fair.
And their new album.
Yeah, just like Sleep Token. Me and Vessel are basically the same person.
You could be Vessel,
Yeah,
except
as
for
far
that.
as you know, we
Yeah.
are the same person.
Yeah. Although I think Internet Sleuths or something figured out who he is. So,
Yeah, there's a song about it on the new album.
is there a song about it in the new album?
He says people yell his real name just to get a rise out of him.
Oh, I'm sorry, bud.
Yeah.
Well, if it helps, I don't know what his real name is.
And we never will.
Yeah.
Vessel,
Vessel.
this one's
we
going
got
out
you.
to you. We will remain ignorant.
Yeah. This is for you. I will.
I
Yeah.
love how we always have messages to celebrities that will never, ever hear any of it. And we're always like, Steve Buscemi with your weird eyeballs.
I'm gonna at Vessel for this when I post this.
Then he'll be like, the second part of a King Arthur podcast. Just what I was hoping
This
for.
makes so much sense. Are you kidding though? If you look at his art, I feel like Vessel would be somebody that would enjoy King Arthur stuff, because if you look at like he does like there's some poses for the new album that he has like swords, and he has like 2 columns with flowers and his whole thing, and the art style that they have is very like Rococo. I know you love, but it's because it has this like floral gilded look, but it also has this like edgy sort of metal aspect to it. So it's like the most elegant metal, and I think that it would really, do well with medieval ideas mixed in. So.
Interesting. All right. Well, Vessel, if you listen to this episode, sound off in the comments. Tell us if you're a fan of King Arthur and only listening to part 2s of things.
Yeah, there you go. So anyways, yeah, we're on part 2 of King Arthur. But first,
Wait. But if you reply, don't use your real name.
Yeah, we want to respect your anonymity.
Yeah. Anyway, okay, we're done. So, Brandon, I saw where Kelly was going with this, and I'm jumping ahead. How was your week?
My week was good. I didn't actually prepare something to say about my week. So, does anyone want to go first while I think about that?
No.
Kelly?
Let's see. What's happened since the last time we recorded? I mean, well, it's been dusty, so I've got this deeper sound in my voice, which is nice. I really find myself attractive right now. No, nothing exciting has happened that I feel like getting into.
That's fine.
Yeah,
Man.
not every week
Yeah.
needs to be a
Yeah.
knockdown, drag out, barn burner of a
Like
week.
they say in the Sleep Token album, you can't always have masterpieces or whatever the lines are.
That's probably
Not
that.
every lyric is a banger. That's not the
That's
song.
an exact quote.
But you know what I mean.
No one's life is
Brandon.
better by hearing that my life isn't great.
No, I feel much better about myself. Every time you come over and you're like, it's been rough, I'm like, yes, I feel so great about myself.
So terrible.
Let me tell you something, Brandon. Things are going great for me. Just like
Yeah,
that.
I've been secretly sabotaging your entire life so that I feel better about myself. So you come over and I'm like, how's your week, Brand? Did your tires happen to get slashed at work the other day? How did you know? I don't know. That's awful, though. What a terrible week you're having.
All right. So here, let's start.
So guess what? We still have exhausted energy.
Yeah,
Congratulations.
it's the same.
So here's the thing. Not too much has happened, and that's okay, as I've been told repeatedly. But I did want to, like, maybe I'll just follow up on an old one. So I
So
still
caramel, how
am,
are we doing?
Yeah, I still am saying caramel. But you know what, world? I don't really care for the candy. So it's not
love caramel.
Right. No, I knew that. I did.
It's so delicious.
So, but I don't really care for it. So it's not really in my life very much. So I find myself not saying the word. I think I've said caramel more times this podcast than I have in the time since the last podcast. But what I am doing every once in a while is just thinking about that. And I remember.
You just think about caramel.
You say it out loud.
Yeah, I'll just say caramel. Caramel. That's right. Yeah, caramel. So I feel like I'm pretty good at integrating that into my speech.
So far, so good.
Yeah, I haven't flubbed it yet.
The weekly checkup has now become just a weekly how's Brandon doing with this one word.
It's caramel accountability.
Listen,
yeah. Because this is definitely the third one we've talked about caramel.
Okay, well you can cut that.
No.
You have some options now.
Yeah, I can talk
You can
about
go
your
with the
sad, depressing version.
Or we can talk about caramel, which is much better. Oh, are you guys ready for my week?
Yeah.
Listen, it was amazing, okay?
You slashed Brandon's tires?
I was reading an old diary. And
of yours?
No,
or just somebody's?
Like someone from the 1800s.
Oh, okay.
And she was writing about how she saw her husband. They were away for a long time. And then she said, and we spent the morning in like sweet and delightsome intercourse. And then the like person had put brackets in and said communication. And I just love the like person who's writing this, copying this down. And he goes, do you think she, did she make, nah, she probably meant communicate. Like,
I better let the people know.
yeah, I don't know why. I took a screenshot of it and sent it to Michaela. And I was like, this is my favorite liner note of all time.
I love it.
Anyway, so that happened this week. I wrote a blog about AI, about how to effectively utilize it. And by the end of it, I came to the conclusion that it will probably reduce employment for knowledge workers by a significant margin. And I talked about that a little bit, and I wound up finishing the blog in a full-on meltdown spiral about our society. And it makes for some compelling reading.
What's a knowledge worker?
A knowledge
Is that
worker?
like a sex worker?
Yeah, but with knowledge.
Okay.
That's exactly it.
I pay someone and then they give
and then
me
they know
knowledge.
things. No, they just know things.
Oh, dang. Wait, what is sex? Okay. We can't keep this joke going. Anyway.
No.
We're just wasting time. But okay.
Let's start over.
What's a knowledge worker?
A knowledge worker is a lot like a sex worker. But for knowledge. No. They're called the whirs of the brain. All right.
Okay, you were worried.
We might go too long.
I was going to say that you were worried that we wouldn't have the nighttime
that
energy.
you wouldn't be fun. Nope, you've got nighttime energy.
This is working just fine.
It turns out you guys are steady for your humor. It doesn't matter what time it is.
I was going to say, that's just our energy.
Yeah, exhausted humor.
Okay, so what is a knowledge worker, you ask?
I did.
Allow me to elaborate.
It's like a sex worker.
This time it's your fault.
I'm sorry.
You did that to yourself. I
I
was about to be serious for a second.
No, you can
All
be
right, ready?
serious.
So you asked about what a knowledge worker is, and I'm glad you did that, Brandon.
I feel good about myself. After that week, I needed it. Unless you edited that part out, and then I'm fine.
It was a great week. Anyway, caramel. A knowledge worker is a professional whose main asset is their knowledge and expertise, often using critical thinking and problem-solving skills to create new information or develop strategies. Examples include engineers, doctors, and IT professionals who think for a living rather than perform manual tasks. So that's more, like, my concern is not, oh, AI can do everything I can do. That's not my concern. My concern is that somebody who doesn't have a relationship to the work being done, who's in charge of everything, will go, have you ever thought about saving us $10 million and firing all these people and replacing it with a chatbot, and the edict will come down from on high. Like, they already, Microsoft and Meta and Google have all fired tens of thousands of people, right? That's even without AI. That's just them being like, oh, our numbers aren't great. Let's fire 10,000 people.
Good grief.
That's insane. So, yeah, my concern is more that those type of people will just view it as another excuse to fire people. And
So it's almost that AI isn't the problem. It's that humans that care more about profits and don't actually have any kind of understanding of the workings and processes that need to happen with quality work are
They know enough to be dangerous.
Yeah.
And it's not that they don't understand the work. They're just willing to accept a lower quality if it is at a much lower price.
It's like the theme of every zombie video game, that the real monster is
It's humanity.
Yeah, it's humanity.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what this really makes me think of with, like, leadership, not really thinking things through and kind of going with the short term. It feels sort of like how King Arthur is always like trying to jump the closest lady to him rather than think about that long-term relationship he wants to have with his sweet someone.
What an excellent
Right?
segue.
Perfection, Brandon. Also, I'm really jealous of your low voice. I want to be like more sultry. Like, today we're talking about Arthur.
We're going to get in a salt off. We're all trying to be more sultry.
Sultry.
Hello, listeners. I'm here, not on the bed, but next to it. We're discussing Arthur.
Hey, listen, baby.
Mine is like a horror voice, and yours is like an actual like Barry voice, and I'm like, you want to hear about Arthur? I'll tell you about Arthur.
I just want to hear, let's talk about Arthur and that sword.
None of this. We have been going for
24 minutes.
yeah.
It's nothing.
Actually, I thought it was a lot more, so I feel like we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, we're doing good. So anyways, with your perfect segue. But anyways, so
All right.
back to the matter at hand, because so with this second episode, I really didn't want to do 3 parts. And so I scaled down as much as I could for the second part. And so there's so much of like stories and nights and all this kind of stuff. So if you're like really vibing on the stories being told in these episodes, just read Thomas Mallory's La Mort de Arthur.
L'amour?
La Mort?
La mort. The death
The
or
death.
the love?
The death of Arthur.
Yeah.
La
I guess.
mort.
L'amour. How do you say it in French?
Just how I did a second
Do
before.
it again. Do it again.
La mort.
L'amour.
D'Arthur.
I keep adding this that you're not doing at all.
Well, no, it's there a little bit. I'll give you that. La mort. Right? The little, right there.
It's just a tiny, tiny bit.
La mort.
My French is a little more German than yours.
So, anyways, let's. So, as a real quick recap, we went over the 2 archaeologists that had Arthur,
Yep.
and Bly Bond, who was doing the like paranormal stuff.
Bly Bond.
Anyways, so King Arthur gets Excalibur, and that's kind of where we're at. And so, again, there are a whole bunch of stories in here that I think are very funny and I enjoyed. But they are not super vital to the, like, one of my favorites was there's a whole side quest about a guy that gets attacked and killed by an invisible knight. And so another knight has to go find and kill this invisible knight, which is like a real quest somebody was on. Galahad's search for the Holy Grail. Or like Balin finds the spear that pierced Jesus in somebody's house. Like one of the king's houses just had it. And so he used it to attack another king and it made the entire castle crumble. Like crazy stories. Mm-hmm. But we're going to skip them all. Sorry.
Okay. So just, I have one question about these stories because we're not sure Arthur ever actually existed still, right?
Yeah.
Like they had this whole thing and that he was under this slab and then they went and he wasn't under there.
Yeah. So I think in last time, I think I said it was King Henry VIII or the 5th.
Oh, that had him moved potentially?
Yeah, right. But I think it was actually King Henry. I might have said King Henry V, but I think it was King Henry VIII actually.
One of the Henrys.
One of the Henrys. But like they never found any of the evidences that the monks said was there. They didn't find the bones. They didn't find the middle cross. And in some accounts, it says that Excalibur was even buried with him and that there was like a king parading around with Excalibur's sword for a while, but it magically went missing, which I'll talk about that a little bit in the end. But
so these stories are like, we don't even know if he exists. Mm-hmm. So it's not like there's a canon, right? Mm-hmm. Like there is with scripture.
Yeah.
Like, so all of these stories are some level of myth, basically.
Yeah. I mean, more or less.
But do they have like a rating? Like some were like, oh yeah, this is definitely probably more potentially possibly real. And this is definitely for sure fake real.
So as far as like historians or for the people that were reading it, like in medieval times?
Historians.
So you're jumping super far ahead. Because this is what I was going to sum up with.
Oh, okay, good.
I mean,
well, I apologize.
That feels like, to me, that question is like, is the Iliad considered more true than some other, like, Greek
Well,
myths
like, they
and
found
stuff?
Troy.
Yeah.
Right. So a city exists. I mean, that's great. But, like, that doesn't... What about the Cyclops and the Sirens and, like, all of that jazz that makes you care about the story?
Well, like, they... but
So now we know what your obsessive archaeological project is going to be. Because it can't be Stargate. It's going to be finding Troy and all of the proof of the Cyclops and the Sirens.
Yeah, there you go. I want to prove a Cyclops exists.
That's easy. Just grab a fork. Congratulations, you're the Cyclops now. Okay, no, but like Troy existed, and they can find like, you know, gravestones or whatever with like Achilles' name on them or something like that, right? Like there's families that really existed. I don't think Achilles existed, but like there's this like kind of, I mean, that's actually a really good example, the Odyssey and the Iliad, because there is this kind of historical undercurrent,
Right.
that is then built upon, embellished fabulously.
The problem, and I think this is a good comparison, because the difference is that they don't have any of those proved historical things. So they
For Arthur.
King Arthur.
Yeah, so like they did find in Tintagel or Tintagel. I was watching documentaries and they said it Tintagel. They found buildings there, but they didn't find within those buildings any direct connection to Arthur. And like, again, this is jumping ahead a little bit, but so far, you know, the archaeological evidence that supports a real Arthur is flimsy at best.
Yeah. So I guess what's interesting then is this, like, this is going to sound terrible when I say it this specific way.
Whoa.
But I do have a point that I think is a good point. But, okay, here's the thing. What's the point of the stories then? If we have no way of knowing it's fake? And like, I mean that from the point of like the people that made the stories, because the stories themselves are old, right? And they were just making them up for the most part, we can assume. So for them, what was the point of the story? Like if they tell the story about this man of the night of a king, you know, who goes from place to place sleeping with the ladies, like why were they telling these stories?
Yeah.
Can I jump in on this?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I think that humans like stories. Like we enjoy being entertained. We like to have our entertainment have a purpose, right? Like, what's the moral of the story is often like something that we're looking for while we're listening to the story, but embellishments and things like that just make it more entertaining. When I was going through firefighter training, one of the silly rules was if you're ever telling a story and somebody asks, like the story is he met this girl, like the girl's always hot. Like, it's just like if you're telling a story, that's how it should be or whatever. And I think that, you know, maybe there was or wasn't an Arthur, but like there definitely wasn't a magical Merlin who changed. Like, I'm sorry, but this is, you know, we're my opinions. That there wasn't.
Sasquatch is so offended.
Listen,
right now.
I'm gonna fight you on this. Merlin. Look at this Merlin tattoo I got just last week.
Merlin is real.
You're like, it's
Flex.
one of those ones that when you turn it one direction, he's a little 14-year-old boy, and when you turn it the other way, he's a 90-year-old man.
Yeah.
Like a holographic
Yeah.
tattoo.
They make those, right?
They should.
They should. Yeah.
Well, you know, so like I think these were probably like fun stories that were told around, you know, a fire or something, and
I think
it's
also
a lot better to
make
believe that your king is like awesome, right? And has the Lady of the Lake handing him magical swords that, like, this is great. We live in such a great country.
I think also there's an amount of we have been like oral like history keepers for a very long time, and with stories of that nature, it's always, you know, like to the telephone game, it's going to change a little bit and it's going to get bigger and more exciting and more impressive. So maybe in the 6th century when they started these stories, whomever they were talking about wasn't so outrageous. But, you know, in the 14th century, when it's been around for a while, he's like, really got to do some impressive things. Right.
I mean, there are or have been people who make a living by telling stories and entertaining, and like...
It's literally what we're doing right now.
You make better
we're not
stories.
Really making a living by it, but
no, certainly not.
We're making stories happen.
But...
Or retelling stories.
You know, like, you need to entertain your audience.
Yeah. So...
Hold on.
To entertain the audience.
Why do these stories exist? I mean, I think that it's to tell a story, hopefully to get a point across, and to entertain.
Okay. I'm going to disagree.
Oh, man. I love it when you do that.
But only conditionally.
Okay.
Because, yeah, I think I agree. Stories can be for that. But it depends on who's telling it, right? Mm-hmm. Because... like, think of this. We have a story about a powerful king who is undone by the lust of the flesh, right?
Okay.
This story would mean something different if it was a peasant telling another peasant the tale versus a clergyman telling their flock a tale versus a king telling their subjects the tale, right?
Okay.
Like,
I'm with you.
Each of those contexts gives it a different meaning. So the story... like, is myths and stories like this are often, especially if it's used by the powerful, about control, right? Mm-hmm. About creating a narrative that you want other people to believe. And so I guess that's what I'm curious about, is who the narrative serves. I feel like all of this would have been much better as the end of this instead of me being like, holy... That's
where I had it planned.
Well, let's put a pin in this conversation and then...
All right, sorry. Continue. I won't ask any more questions until we get to the end and I'm allowed to ask questions.
Yeah, we'll circle back.
Yeah.
Because I think you'll see some of how that happens in real life.
I have a question, but it's not going to do what just happened, okay?
She's going to throw something at us.
So did I pick up that you condensed this down and now we're doing a 2-part? Or is this still 3 parts?
2 parts.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the end of it.
We're finishing it off.
We're finishing it today.
Okay.
It was always going to be 2 parts.
Yeah, I said 2 parts
really?
last time. And
we promised Ashwini.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know why my brain thought this was going to be another trilogy.
Because you were really excited.
Oh, man. Give
You
me
love
all
King
the-
Arthur. It's your passion. You're gonna go find his bones.
I thought I was looking
You'll
for
be
the
the one.
Cyclops.
King
yeah.
Arthur is a Cyclops. That's why they haven't been able to find him.
yes.
Yes.
He was blinded by...
The right.
I can't remember his name, so I stopped. What's his
Merlin?
name?
Lancelot.
Theseus? Who's in the Iliad?
Odysseus?
Odysseus.
Who's in the Odyssey? I don't know, man. Probably someone
Listen.
named like Jeff.
You know what? I'm not great with those kind of things. Odyssey and Odysseus, I wouldn't
That's
put them
right, because
together.
it's a different.
They're different words.
I didn't mean to say it that way.
It's true. They are different words.
Yeah. So for me,
But
like,
Brandon, it's like
I thought
it's got to be the same.
in fact, let's admit that my mind is blown a little bit. Are you telling me that the word Odyssey is because Odysseus went on a big trip?
Yeah.
Stupid. First person that goes on a big trip and they
He was
name a
the
word
first.
after him. What if
Yeah.
his name had been Dumpelstiltskin?
Okay, Eddie Izzard literally made this joke. He's like, if he'd been named Jonathan, it would have been a Jodassy. Anyway, listen,
Eddie and I are on the same wavelength
remember
here.
when you promised that this would not do what mine
I
did?
didn't know.
It's doing what mine did.
I didn't know Odyssey and Odysseus were related when I made that claim.
Who could have
okay?
drawn that conclusion? Who could have connected those dots?
The Odyssey.
So, all right. So this is a little anecdote about King Arthur and his knights being good and chivalrous, which I thought was very interesting and applicable. Because literally last time you were talking about his chivalry, and we will get to his code here in a second.
Okay, I'm looking forward to learning how chivalrous he could actually be, because he's
Yeah.
not shown it yet.
Yeah. But at the beginning of this next section, this lady comes to the courts of King Arthur in Camelot, and he's there because he's heard that King Rience is preparing to fight against Arthur, so he's gathered his knights there at the round table. Which, by the way, they never ever really talk about how he ends up with a round table. I looked for it, and it just is a thing that they constantly reference. So there's that. Officially, there's not like some magical story about it.
That's hilarious to me.
Because it's such a big deal.
It's one of the like 3 things you know about it, and they're like, I don't know, he just had a
He
round
had a
table.
Yeah. And it, like, don't let me forget, I can't possibly because it's in my notes, but we talk about this round table later. It comes like, it's very historically significant, and there is an actual medieval built round table in Winchester.
Well, so there's nothing in your research that says like how they got it or why they have it, like
How they got
how
it.
they got it.
Yeah. The round table was like, because there's nobody at the head of the table.
Right. Yeah.
But they never talked about how he got it.
Maybe he just asked for
He
one.
just was like, I want it round. And they're like,
Done.
we can't believe that you've come up with this concept. We'll try it. That's actually how they discovered the wheel.
Yeah.
Because they were like, they had
tilted it
rectangle
over.
and square.
They rolled that table in,
And then
on
they
its
were
side.
like, oh my gosh.
These square chariot wheels have just sucked.
That
Anyways,
is kind of a good point, though, that, like, when you think about it, this is so dumb, but, like, every picture or whatever you see Vikings or whatever, they're all at square tables.
yeah.
Like, maybe it was the first round, and that is what's amazing about it, is everyone came from miles around and just be, look how round it is.
That's why they kept talking about it. They're
Yeah.
like, it's a round
His
table.
round table.
It's nuts.
And then they went home to their square tables, and they're like, I hate this thing now.
It's got these sharp corners. I was hitting my thigh on it. Anyways. So this lady shows up at the courts of Camelot, and Arthur is actually there with his knights. And she was sent by the lady, Leal of Avalon. Hey! I'm so sorry for all those noises that just happened. And she had a sword. And the sword could only be pulled from its scabbard by a good, faithful, and not treasonous knight, is what it said. So Arthur is like, I got you. And he can't pull the sword from the scabbard.
Oh, no.
And then he's like, all right, anybody else? And all of his knights try, and not a single one of them can get the sword out of the scabbard.
It's not a good sign.
None of them fulfilled a good, faithful, and not treasonous knight. If I was Arthur at that point, not only would I have some self-introspection that needs to happen, but I would be like, what is going on with my knights?
Well, that's funny that that's your response, because my response would be like, witch! Come in here trying to sully our names. Burner.
Well,
that's how he would find new knights. He's like, can I borrow that scabbard? And then he just goes everywhere like, hey, pull on this. Okay, you're good. Come with me.
Yeah.
Pull my sword.
But she is leaving, and this is, I hope you would feel bad for burning her as a witch, because just down the hallway, Balin, if you remember,
right,
is walking down the hall because he was just released from prison.
A
paragon of virtue.
Yeah, but he was in there.
He's like, don't even. I'm not gonna try and pull the sword, guys.
Yeah,
we know my deal.
And he's dressed in rags, so he wasn't actually imprisoned for anything. It was like not a big deal, I guess. And I think it's almost in the story to prove a point, because he was like dressed in rags and he was not clean. And she sees him in the hall and is like, I guess all these other knights couldn't do it. Do you want to try? And he pulls the sword from the scabbard easily. And so it actually worked. So maybe she was a witch, but she actually wasn't. The sword was sent by somebody else. So she was a regular lady. But what's sad is that she asks for the sword. She's like, super well done. Can I have the sword back now? And Balin is like, no, I really like it.
And now these feelings I have, if I put that back in the scabbard, I can't get it back out.
And he's like, I'm going to keep it. And she was like, you're going to be cursed to kill your best friend and the person you love most in the world. And he's like, if that's God's will. But I'm going to keep the sword. And if you remember...
I was thinking of doing that anyway,
yeah,
so...
Might
as well get a sword out of the deal.
And if you remember,
Balin.
Yeah, he kills his brother, who is his best friend and who he loved the most in the world.
Why did he kill his brother?
Because he pulled the sword.
Do you don't remember this?
No.
Last time.
Okay, allow me.
Yes.
He had a different shield. He had a different shield than he normally does, and they both were in armor, and neither one of them was like, who am I fighting? They were just like, oh, this guy in front of me is my fight for the day. Okay. And then at the end, after they mortally wounded each other, they realized, oh, brother, you were using a different shield than I'm used to. I don't have an excuse for why I stabbed you.
And then they both died.
I just never really liked you. Hold on.
Look at this sweet sword.
It did make me think of, in Futurama where, like, Bender gets cursed to kill his best friend, and at first he goes after Leela, but then later he goes after Fry, and Fry is like, "Aw."
Happy, yeah.
So like Balin can be like, "Aw, at least I was your favorite and most loved person."
I would love it if he went like, he doesn't put it in a scabbard forever, and then he stabs someone in the chest, and then he goes to pull it out, and he's like, "Oh no, it thinks you're the scabbard," and he's just like dragging this body around trying to yank his sword out. He's like, all right,
I guess that's how it is. So yeah, that happens. So that's kind of the state of the knights at that point. So anyways, the Lady of the Lake shows up at Camelot to ask Arthur,
and she's like, have you seen my other sword?
By the way. So remember, the Lady of the Lake is the one that gave Arthur Excalibur, and she asked for a gift and when she wanted it, and he said, I'll give you whatever you want when you ask. So she shows up and is like, I'm ready for my gift. And King Arthur is like, okay, hit me with it. And she's like, I want the head of the knight that just pulled that sword from the scabbard. And if not him, then the girl that brought the sword, one or the other. And she explains that it's because the knight, so Balin, had killed the Lady of the Lake's brother at some point.
The Lady of the Lake had a brother?
That's what I said. And they just went right over that.
The brother of the lake.
The brother of the lake. And then the lady that had brought the sword was the cause of the Lady of the Lake's father's death. So...
How?
Nobody said. She just is like, they did it. And everyone was like, okay, moving on.
These kind of little story threads are why Josh is like, why are they stories being told?
What's the point?
Yeah. And so Arthur says, I can't do that because Balin has done a lot for our kingdom, and I also can't behead this lady. And the Lady of the Lake is trying to like talk with Arthur about this, but Balin through the window sees the Lady of the Lake and is like, not on my watch. And he goes down and he cuts her head off just because he saw her there.
Oh, the irony.
He is such a paragon of virtue.
Yes.
No
And
This guy definitely deserved to pull the sword out of the scabbard.
yeah.
So I thought the Lady of the Lake was like mystical.
Yeah. Yeah. She had like magic stuff.
But she could just get
But
killed.
her neck was completely normal.
Okay.
It was like her Achilles heel.
Oh, she had an Achilles neck. That's another Eddie as a joke. Okay, so hold on.
Mm-hmm.
Balin.
Yes.
Who did Balin kill? The
lot
Lady
of
of the
people.
Lake's dad or brother?
Brother and the Lady of the Lake now.
And now the Lady of the Lake.
So he must have killed the brother
Mm-hmm.
before he pulled the scabbard.
Yes.
The sword from the scabbard.
Yes.
This is the crappiest magical scabbard. It does not work.
Yeah.
It's like a lie detector test that is completely inaccurate.
Yeah.
Well, at the time, killing people was not a bad thing. The knights killed lots of people.
Maybe he thought, I mean, Balin had killed a lot of people. Maybe he had a good reason. I don't know. They don't say. But she's mad about it. Obviously.
This really sounds... Did you ever read Axe Cop?
Yes.
I didn't read
Yes.
it. I watched the show.
There's a show?
Mm-hmm.
You haven't seen the show?
You need to
no,
watch
is
it,
it
Josh.
It is worth it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, who plays Ron from
He-
Parks and Rec?
Yeah. And Ron voices Axe Cop.
That's so amazing.
It is.
What is this actor's name? This is going to drive me crazy. He was in the latest Mission Impossible, too.
He's also in The Last of Us.
All I can think about is Ron.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Ron Swanson.
let's skip Ron Swan. But yeah, like, what the heck was I saying before you derailed me completely? Oh, Axe Cop.
Axe
Yeah.
Cop.
This literally sounds like Axe Cop because they're always like, and then someone showed up and was like, you killed my brother. And I was like, no, I killed your mother. Meh.
Maybe storytelling wasn't as refined in the 6th century.
Nick Offerman.
There it
Nick
is.
Offerman,
Nick
thank
Offerman.
you.
We
It's
can
quite
dedicate this
possible.
episode to him and Vessel.
Yeah. If they're hanging out together.
Yeah, they probably would. So anyways, Arthur is so upset that Balin does this that he is forced to exile Balin from his kingdom.
But he still doesn't cut his head off.
No.
He's like, listen, her dying wish was for me to
For
cut
me
your
to
head
cut it
off.
But no.
I better do it.
But Merlin had told him that he was going to still do good for the kingdom. So he needed to let him live, but he had to exile him instead. So Arthur exiles Balin and then buries the Lady of the Lake with great riches. By the way, her name was Nimue. Did you know that?
Certainly not.
Yeah, in the writing, it says her name is Nimue. And I was super confused because later there's another lady named Nimue. I went back and checked, and they're like, her name was Nimue. I was like, the other one was named Nimue. And they're like, they're both Nimue.
There were only like 6 girl names back then.
Yeah. So, also, in my notes, I was like, find that tomb, guys. Find her tomb. If you're going to find a tomb, it's laden with riches. But nobody's bothered. Probably because it was a woman. Anyways, there's more stuff about Balin. There's tons of chapters about Balin. But then we skip forward a little bit to Merlin predicts that 2 great knights will fight on a great battlefield, but neither will be able to kill the other. And the names of these 2 knights is Lancelot du Lake and Tristram. So this is Enter Lancelot, who is incredibly important to the story of King Arthur. And then there's more warnings, more schemings. And then we kind of skip back to the war that King Rience is trying to wage against Arthur. And Rience, his brother, King Nero, and then King Lot, like he's the one that like was the first aggressor when King Arthur was first trying to prove himself as king. So Lot is on Nero and Rience's side. So Merlin, who is now involved in the war, decides to distract King Lot through sorcery to keep him from helping Nero, as Nero is trying to assist Rience.
And sorcery is the name of a stripper.
Anyways.
Send her over.
So that's what it was. Merlin was just a pimp. Anyways, so a knight shows up to King Lot and is like, hey, by the way, you're being tricked. And King Lot is super sad about it.
Why would they trick me?
And then he's like talking to Merlin and he's like, why would you do this? And Merlin tells him that he knew a king would die today and he'd rather it be Lot than Arthur. And so Lot dies.
Merlin always playing favorites.
Dies of what? A broken heart?
Sir Pellerin. He shows up and kills Lot.
Who's Sir Pellerin?
So Sir Pellerin is a knight. That,
yeah.
Yeah, he supports Arthur.
You talked about him last time. He's very good.
Yeah.
But in the Disney show, he just has a bushy mustache.
Big bushy mustache. But he's a really good knight. And
Wait,
he's very
no,
skilled.
that was Palinor. Who's this guy?
Pellerin? Pellinor? I think I said his name wrong. It
Oh.
was Sir Pellinor. So the same guy. Anyways. And here is part of why all this matters. So lots of people came for the burial of these dead kings.
Lots of people came for the burial of Lot.
Yeah, you're on fire.
Yeah.
So that included Lot's wife, his 4 sons, King Uriens.
King Urine.
King Urine?
I have a hard time because in the audiobook it just says King Uriens, but it's spelled Uriens. Urien. So I'm going to say it that way.
Parents flirted with disaster there.
Yeah. So King Uriens and his wife Morgan Le Fay, which if you remember, Morgan Le Fay is Arthur's sister. So it's super important to remember her. So while this is going on, Merlin reminds Arthur to keep his scabbard since that will keep him from dying.
Different scabbard.
Right.
The scabbard
magical
to...
The
scabbard.
magic scabbard
of Excalibur.
Excalibur.
Yes. So what he decides to do is take it to his sister so she can keep it safe until he needs it.
Whatever you do, keep this on you at all times. Great.
Here.
Can you hold this for me,
Keep
my
this
sister?
safe
Keep it
until I
safe.
need it.
If
Yeah.
you see me stabbed in the chest with a giant wound, give me
Give me
that
the
scabbard
scabbard.
real quick.
Fast. But she also doesn't love her brother that much. And actually, it says in the writing that she hates her brother. And she loves another knight. So she makes a replica of the scabbard and the sword of the scabbard, I guess, and gives the real one to her lover, Sir Accolon of Gaul.
So not her husband.
Not her husband. Her husband is not her.
She also has a husband.
Yes, King
Urine.
Uriens.
Oh,
Yeah.
King Urine. Yeah, I remember him.
That's her husband.
He invented pee.
He named it, at least. So that's her husband. But it's this knight, Sir Accolon, that she loves. So she gives him the scabbard. So some time passes, and Arthur asks...
So some people feel like, what are those? The Real Housewives or whatever?
Kardashians.
Like, yes, or the Kardashians. They think all this stuff is scandalous, and they're like, we're living in an age of depravity.
It was always this way.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of Arthur, man?
It's so depraved. Anyways, so some time passes, and Arthur asks Merlin for counsel since his barons are mad that he hasn't chosen a second wife. And I don't know why this is such an important thing.
Wait.
They're like, war is kind of happening, but his barons are mad that he doesn't have a second wife. Because his first wife, nobody knows what happened to her, but he had a child with her, and then nobody heard from her again.
Okay. So not that he have a second wife like polygamy, but just you're not married.
You don't currently have a wife.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And so Merlin is like, well, is there anybody that you love? And Arthur immediately says Guinevere. And Merlin is like, just so you know, Guinevere and Lancelot are going to fall in love. But if the heart wants what it wants, and Arthur's like, it does. Give me Guinevere. And so
Was he really thinking with his heart, though?
Who knows?
That's not an Arthur thing to do.
So far, no.
He's
But
thinking with his scabbard.
yeah. So anyways, Merlin makes it happen. And on the wedding day, Gawain, so like Godfather style again, Arthur is, granting favors and listening to people asking to be knights on that kind of stuff. So wedding day festivities. And so on the wedding day, Gawain asks to be a knight and he's knighted. Like, no question. Which Gawain is one. I tried to find the ones that were knights' names that I could remember as like famous ones. And Gawain was one of them. And then a peasant whose name was Ares the Coward.
Gotta get that name changed, man.
Yeah. He asked Arthur to make his son Tor a knight. And Arthur says, why? And he says, I have 13 sons and Tor is the best one. And so they bring all the sons and Arthur looks at all the sons and he's like, yeah, Tor is your best kid. and then he's like, why is that? And then they find out from the mother
that he's not his father.
Yes. So what happens is Sir Pellerin came and forced himself upon Ares the Coward's wife and had Tor, and Arthur was like, whoa, Pellinor has a son. That's fantastic. And
let me gloss over the rape part of the story.
Yeah, so...
Also the fact that he was so mean to Mr. Coward there.
Yeah.
He's like, listen, the only one of your sons that worth anything is the one that's not one of your sons.
By the way. And so then King Arthur is like, okay, fine. We'll make him a knight. And then Pellerin is like, tight. It's nice to meet you, son. And that was like it, I guess.
And then it's a buddy comedy.
But okay, there's so much convolution in here. So Sir Gawain, that was just knighted right before Sir Pellerin's son's Tor, was really mad because Pellerin had killed Gawain's father, which, if you remember, is King Lot, is Gawain's father, who Gawain just asked to be Arthur's knight. And that doesn't make sense to me. So Gawain's brother, who is Gaheris, if you remember, was still a squire at this time, and he told his brother, like, sit tight, wait till I'm knighted as well, and we'll take revenge on Pellinor. I keep calling him Pellerin, but it's Pellinor. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, a bunch of quests happen, and a bunch of them end really tragically. Like,
shocker.
Yeah, one of them is like how King Pellinor refuses to help this lady in need because he's like, I'm too busy to help you. And then he comes back when he's done, and he sees that she and her lover were eaten by a lion. And then Merlin is like, by the way, that was your daughter. So, like, just, fantastic.
It really is the axe cop method of storytelling.
Yeah. So
he saw the poor couple eating, and then Merlin showed up and said, guess what, sucker? That was your daughter.
That was your daughter. You should feel bad. So then all this is going on, and King Arthur is like, this is big yikes, team. We've got some improvement we need to do, so I'm going to come up with a code of chivalry for the knights to stick to. And here are the 6 things that he's specifically listed.
I really hope no raping is one of the rules.
It would be nice. So I want to play this game if you can guess what the 6 are, but I feel like that would take too long.
Man.
Is no rapes one of them?
No, it's not. I mean, in a roundabout way.
You can't break your promise.
No.
All right, so
Anyways.
help out the ladies.
Okay, rule number 1,
Okay,
always
actually-
help the ladies or you get killed.
Okay, here's rule number 1.
Do they all end of pain of death?
No.
Okay.
Rule
That's
number
funny.
1. Never to do outrage or murder.
Hey.
That's a pretty good one. Number 2. Always flee treason. So don't be treasonous.
Okay, I feel like they could have
Wrote
said
it
that a better way.
Yeah. By no means be cruel.
Okay.
So don't be cruel. Give mercy to him that asks mercy.
Okay.
Always support and help and be there for damsels upon pain of death.
Okay.
And the last one is no man take battle in a wrongful quarrel. So
it's okay to fight as long as you were right.
as long as you have a good reason. So that was all the Round Table knights had to swear to these 6 kind of things, and they had to do it renewed each year at the celebration of the Pentecost. So there we go. So, all this is going on, and Merlin decides to have an adventure of his own. So Merlin goes out, and he is maybe influenced by... He's maybe influenced by Arthur because he goes and he falls in love with a lady.
Is he the 14-year-old boy Merlin at this point, or the 90-year-old old man?
He's the older man now.
Oh, dang, okay.
He's his old...
Or the big gray squirrel.
He's his normal self. And he falls in love, and it is a different lady of the lake, also named Nimue.
But not the same lady of the lake.
Not the same lady of the lake.
So he didn't fall in love with the beheaded lady.
No. This is a living one, but I guess maybe the new lady of the lake. Maybe it's a mantle.
I think the lake needs a lady.
Yeah. She and he are starting to get to know each other, and he has magic, obviously. So she makes Merlin promise he will never use his magic on her. And he promises that he won't.
Oh, dang. She's going to die. And his magic could have saved her.
No, he's definitely going to just use his magic on
her. But the problem is he's super smitten by her. I don't know why that S lasted for so long.
Hold on. We're putting too much thought into this. We need ex-cop logic.
Oh, yeah.
Lancelot's going to show up and say that she's his daughter.
Let's see how this unfolds.
Brandon, what's your ex-cop style
thing?
Yeah.
Okay. He's super smitten with her, finds out that she's his grandma.
Oh, that's a pretty good guess. Not correct, but I like it. I didn't say yours. Sorry. But we're going to see if yours plays out.
I'm feeling good about my chances.
So he won't leave her alone, and he follows her everywhere she goes. And she doesn't like it. She doesn't want him around, and part of it is because she recognizes that he's a devil's son, since his magic is suspect. Like, the type of magic he does is not like earthy water lake magic, I guess. So she's like, he's the son of a devil. Which really, like, colors any of his advice if he is.
I know, I was going to say, this is a real twist.
Yeah.
We've thought Merlin was a good guy all the
this
time.
This whole time.
That really explains all the stuff going on with
so much
King Arthur so much better.
Yeah.
And Merlin's like, I don't know, man. Maybe you should...
Sure, have Guinevere.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is a great idea.
It's all this bad advice. He's like worm tongue whispering in his ear.
Yeah.
King Arthur.
So.
And that's what he's whispering in his ear? King Arthur.
That's it.
He just says his name to him, just to hype him up. You're the king, man. You're the king. Go get him, king.
He's his real head guy. So, while he's like trying to impress her, he's showing her these really fancy caves that he likes.
This is not a euphemism.
No.
Hey, lady. I know you're into lakes, but I got some serious caves.
So she seizes an opportunity because she sees that she could trick him. And so then, using his own magic, he traps himself accidentally inside the cave. And so instead of helping him, she's like, bye, and leaves, and he dies in the cave. And that is how
That's
Merlin
the end
died.
of Merlin.
Merlin be dead.
Yeah, Merlin be dead.
He couldn't get out of the cave that he trapped himself in with his own magic?
Correct. Maybe it's like in Howl's Moving Castle, the Witch of the Waste can cast curses, but she can't undo curses.
Yeah.
Maybe Merlin's a little bit like that. Like, he can do a lot of stuff, but he can't undo very much.
Man. All right.
I could not predict that copy and
You tried.
logic.
Yeah,
I you want to see some caves out of nowhere, but you know what I love is some caves. Come on, I'll show you. I thought it. So when you said that, I thought it was gonna be like, oh, she tricked him. So then he goes in, and she's like, oh yeah, do that stuff, and like pushes some other girl in the cave, and then he's like, ah, no, I'm married to this other girl. But instead, she just locks him in a cave, and he dies.
And he dies. Yeah. I'm not sure what the moral of that story would be.
Honestly, I'm not sure what the moral is to any of these stories.
Yeah.
This is wild stuff.
I have.
Yeah.
I've been thinking that this whole time. I'm like, save it to the end. We'll discuss all the morals.
Yeah.
Or lack thereof.
Yeah, we're almost there. So here there's a lot of stuff that happens. There's just like so much that happens. But the main point is that there is a great battle happening and Arthur was ready to fight. Anyways, he was ready to fight, so he needed his sword.
Okay.
Sorry. So one of the damsels of Morgan Le Fay,
His
sister, he's like, I need my sword, and she's like, I'll go get it. And so she goes and gets his sword and scabbard, which is the fake one.
Scabbard.
Yeah, it's fake sword and fake scabbard.
Double fake.
What happened to the real sword?
They don't say it like earlier, but I think she made a replica at the same time that she made a replica of the scabbard. But I think they make a bigger deal of the scabbard earlier.
So does that mean that her lover has the scabbard and Excalibur?
Yeah.
Okay.
He has both Excalibur and the scabbard. So, again, she gives her lover Accolon the sword and the scabbard, and the big fight is between Arthur and Accolon in this battle. Like, I mean, Accolon is set up to fight Arthur on purpose. Like, she does it on purpose because she knows that he has the scabbard and Excalibur, and Arthur does not. And so they're fighting, and Arthur is losing a lot of blood, but notices that Accolon is not, and puts two and two together and realizes that there was a switch made. And so he fights super valiantly, and then Nimue shows up because
Nimue 2 or Nimue 1?
Nimue 2, because Nimue 1 is dead.
Okay.
Right.
So now anytime we talk about Nimue, it's Nimue 2.
Who killed
Merlin. So she shows up to save Arthur with her magic because she killed Merlin, but knew Merlin cared about Arthur and didn't want to leave Arthur without anybody to help him. And so the battle is raging on, and Arthur's fake sword breaks. And Accolon says Arthur has to yield because he has a broken sword. But we know our boy, and he will not back down. So instead, he says it would be better for him to die with honor than to back down. So Accolon is like, okay, and he strikes at Arthur. But Nimue enchants the broken handle of the broken sword that Arthur has. He uses the enchanted broken sword to knock Excalibur and the scabbard away from Accolon. And so Accolon drops Excalibur, which Arthur picks up super quickly and is able to essentially finish the fight. And since he takes the scabbard, Accolon now is bleeding from all the cuts that he had because Arthur cut him a lot. So at this point, he's very mortally wounded. And then the two are fighting, in this kind of last throes. And now they're really up close and personal. And Arthur is like, by the way, what's your name? And Accolon is like, I'm Accolon. And Arthur is like, you're my sister's lover. This all makes sense. Like, he's starting to figure out who actually switched the swords. Because Accolon says, actually, he doesn't have to put too much together. He says that Morgan Le Fay gave him the sword to kill her brother Arthur, whom she hates.
I love that he's like, I'm putting it together now.
Yeah.
And Accolon's like, I was sent by your sister who hates you with your sword and your scabbard. And he's like, I think I've got a clue here.
And in it says Accolon is like, because she hates him. And she loves me. And she wants to kill her husband and make Accolon the king. And then Arthur goes, well, guess what? I'm Arthur. And Accolon is like, oh no. And loses, essentially. And then he asks for mercy from Arthur, because now he has...
That's one of the tenets.
Yep, that's one of the things. So he asks for mercy from Arthur. So Arthur is like, well, I have to give you mercy because it's one of my things. So he gives it to him, and Accolon is able to leave, but again, he doesn't have the sword and he doesn't have the scabbard. So 4 days later, he dies anyways. So then what Arthur does is he sends the body of Accolon to his sister and tells the messenger to tell his sister that it's a present from her brother. Yikes!
So he also was not particularly fond of her.
No, clearly not. And
Probably any good feelings he may have had were kind of
Destroyed,
ruined
yeah.
with the
When she tricked
murder
him
plot.
and... Yeah.
Yeah. So, in the meantime, while all that is happening, before she receives the corpse of her lover, she thinks that the plan is going swimmingly. So, during the night, she sneaks into her husband's room and is like, beautiful, he's asleep, I am going to kill him. So she turns to her maid and she's like, go and get King Uranus' sword and I'm going to kill him with it. And she's like, okay. So the maid leaves and goes and tells Uwaine, who is the son of Morgan and Uriens, that his mother is planning on killing his father. And so he follows and waits till his mom, follows and sneaks into the room with the maid and waits until his mom is about to kill his dad, and then he jumps in and stops. And so then she asks for mercy and says that she was tricked by the devil. And so he grants her mercy, but on the condition that she never do it again.
Swearsy realsies.
Yeah, for keepsies this time.
Merlin's dad tricked her?
Well, I mean, if he's the son of a devil, then it would have been, yes.
I made a connection there.
Yeah, you did.
Mm-hmm.
Good one. Good one.
So then she leaves and receives her present from Arthur.
It's a real bad night for her.
Yeah, it's not going well. She's having a real rough day.
Yeah.
So what she does is she pretends that it doesn't bother her at all, that she's not upset. And then she rides out to find Arthur and sneaks into his tent.
And she goes to her lady and goes, bring me his sword.
But Arthur is sleeping with Excalibur. So
And the scabbard.
And the scabbard, yeah. So she thinks...
Learned his lesson, yeah.
Yeah.
Fooled me once.
So she thinks I'll just steal it from him and then kill him with it. So she tries to steal Excalibur, but is unsuccessful. But she does get the scabbard. He's not... I don't know why there's not guards. Oh, I do know why. It's written here. So she's able to get away with the scabbard, and Arthur wakes up and is like, what the heck? Where's my scabbard? And the servant is like, Morgan came in and told me I had to let her in and to try and take the sword, and I'm just a servant, so I can't stop her. And he's like, yeah, that's true. Maybe don't let her do it again, though. And so Arthur chases after her and she sees him coming. So she throws the scabbard into the lake and enchants herself to look like a stone, because apparently Morgan can do magic now. And so Arthur rides right by her and doesn't know where the scabbard is because he didn't see her. And so after he leaves, she turns herself back into herself and tells a knight that she doesn't fear Arthur. As long as she can turn herself into stone, there's nothing he can do.
Doesn't she know his sword is literally known for piercing stone?
That was his other sword that broke. Excalibur is the different sword, remember?
What?
Yeah, the sword that was in the stone was not Excalibur.
I forgot that.
Yeah.
Now I remember. Okay, never mind.
In a lot of lore, people say Excalibur is the sword that was in the stone.
But it's not.
But it doesn't make any sense either, because that also Excalibur he gets from the Lady of the Lake.
True.
So I don't know how it's handled.
I
But,
retract my stupid joke about him stabbing a rock with a sword.
but that night that she shows up at Camelot where Arthur is and tells him what Morgan said, but also hands him she wove like a mantle for him to wear. And so the knight, this makes no sense to me, but whatever. The knight tells Arthur that his sister said she's not afraid of him. But here is a mantle for you to wear as a gift from her to try and make amends. And Nimue, who is still there because she's supporting Arthur because she killed Merlin, she advises Arthur to have the messenger put it on first instead of Arthur. And so the messenger puts on the mantle and immediately drops dead and then burns to a crisp. So the mantle was not...
Shocker.
Yeah. And then Arthur's like, well, meh. And then nothing really happens for a while. And during this time, Lancelot and Guinevere are having a full-blown affair. Nobody really talks about it. There's not a lot because I skipped a lot of these chapters because I was like, it's not important. But he's having a full-blown affair. And then Lancelot is like, I can't do this anymore. I have to swear you off. And and she's like upset about it. And so he goes on a quest to find the Holy Grail because he needs to go like purify himself. And then he comes back and sleeps with Guinevere.
Hold on, did he find the Holy Grail?
No, I don't think so.
So he's like, I can't sleep with you anymore. I'm going to go find the Holy Grail to get rid of this. And then he goes halfway out there and then he goes, you know what? I'm just going to sleep with
go
you.
back. So he goes back and he sleeps with Guinevere. And then there's a lot of gossip happening that Lancelot is kind of trying to hide that he and Guinevere are having a thing. But Guinevere is really mad at him because she wants to spend more time with him. But he's trying to not spend time with her so people don't catch on that they're having an affair. And
Those needy girlfriends.
I know.
It's such a stereotype.
And so he explains that he's worried because Agravain and Mordred, which if you remember, Agravain is the brother of Gawain and Gaheris, and they're the sons of Lot. Mm-hmm. And Mordred is is King Arthur's son that he had with his stepsister, I think.
So is Agravain the source of the word aggravate?
I don't know.
This is a real linguistic odyssey for Brandon going on right now.
But anyways, Lancelot knows that Agravain and Mordred know about this affair. And he's worried that they're going to tell somebody and they would be in a lot of trouble if this affair was, brought to light.
King lot of trouble.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got it.
So he suggests that they spend...
Sorry.
So this is his suggestion.
Hold on. It's an Axe Cop suggestion. What's the suggestion, Brandon?
Yeah.
Okay, who's making a suggestion?
Lancelot is making a suggestion to solve the problem of people thinking that he's, having an affair with Guinevere.
So this is his suggestion to Guinevere.
Mm-hmm.
He suggests that they make a paper mache Arthur head, and he wears it anytime he's going to go do the deed.
I feel like that probably would have worked in this time.
His suggestion to Guinevere is to accuse the gardener of being in that affair with her, and then Lancelot will kill the gardener, and the gossip ends.
Both very good. Not what his suggestion was, though. He suggests that he go and spend intimate time with lots of ladies so that it wouldn't seem odd that he's spending that much time with Guinevere.
I like his logic, though.
Is just that Lancelot loves women.
So, but you're saying he specifically is like, I'm going to go be intimate with a lot of women.
So that it's not odd.
And then when I go and be intimate with you, everyone will be cool with it? Because I still think people would not be cool with it.
Yeah, well, oops. I think the idea was he's spending a lot of time with a lot of women, so spending time with Guinevere isn't that odd.
So he wasn't going to be intimate with a lot of women. He was just going to let's knit or let's talk about...
I think that the door was open for whatever.
Really?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't solve his problem.
No.
King Arthur is going to come back and be like, Lancelot, I heard that you have been having sleepy fun times with my wife, but it's all good because Lancelot do what Lancelot did.
Because I heard that's your thing, so
You like women.
that's okay.
I'm sure you can imagine how Guinevere...
Who am I to get between a man and his passions?
I'm sure you can imagine how Guinevere took this idea
Yeah.
She probably went, oh
She's
yeah,
like-
and I should hang out with a bunch of men too, so that it's good on both fronts.
No,
She's
so
just there thinking like, okay, so poisonous mantle, caves. How should we do this?
yeah, we've got some options.
What about a poisonous cave? We haven't done that yet.
Also, take this mantle with you. No, so what she says is that she hates that idea and he has to leave and never come back.
All right.
And so
Backfired on him a little.
I like reading this. I just like hate women in this literature and I hate Guinevere. It's just awful.
Okay.
So just be ready. So Lancelot asks Sir Bors and Sir Ector and Sir Lionel what he should do. And they say that it's super normal for women to make hasty, bad decisions. And they do it all the time. So just stick around and hide out for a little bit and she'll change your mind. She'll want you back. Because apparently they all know about the affair. So then Guinevere...
Well, she's also been sleeping with all of them.
to try and cover up.
Yes,
Yeah.
for camouflage purposes.
So, yeah. Anyway, so in keeping with what you just said, Guinevere decides to hold a dinner for all of the knights. But one of the knights eats an apple and gets poisoned. And the knight that gets poisoned and killed is sort of this off-side character knight. But Gawain is like, I love apples. I bet that poison was meant for me. And everyone was like, you tried to kill Gawain! And they accused Guinevere of trying to kill Gawain. And so in response to this, she weeps and swoons. And so everyone's like, yeah, she's guilty. We should kill her. And, and the dead knights, the knight that died, his cousin goes to Arthur to accuse the queen of treason for killing one of the knights. And Arthur says, okay, well, she can pick a champion to fight for her. So you can have a fight. And if she loses, so if the champion loses, we'll burn her at the stake. He's really sticking up for his gal.
Is he not going to be her champion?
No. No, he won't. But he tells one of his guys, he's like, I think Lancelot will do it. But they're like, we can't find Lancelot. And he's like, that's weird. He's always around Guinevere for some reason. And so then the queen asks Bors to go to fight for her, since nobody can find Lancelot and nobody else is offering to be her champion. But Bors doesn't want to. So he goes and he finds Lancelot, who is in hiding. And Lancelot tells Bors to pretend to be her champion, but just stall till he can get there. And so Bors goes back and he's like, all right, I'll be your champion. And so everything is prepared. And then off to the side, they have like a stake and fire ready to go in case she loses. And so Bors is like getting his stuff on. He's putting his stuff on super low, like slow. They're getting their horses out. And then this white horse races onto the field in full shining armor and asks Bors to stand down and he will fight for Guinevere. And so this unnamed knight goes over and asks Guinevere for the honor of letting him defend her. And then he wins because he's one of the greatest knights in the realm. And then when it's all done, the king and queen ask him to remove his helm. And he's like, cha-cha-cha-cha-cha, I'm Lancelot. And they're like, whoa, who could have guessed? Also, I was like, is this where the knight in shining armor on a white horse comes from?
Sounds like it.
I mean, it sure seems like it.
Okay, given this whole thing, doesn't it seem farcical? Like, why has there never been I guess, like Monty Python and the Search for the Holy Grail or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. Is like kind of a farce with King Arthur. Mm-hmm. But it seems like it needs to be more clueless, like people are idiots.
Yeah.
You need like Tim Robinson and Will Forte, all of the awkward people.
To be cast as like King Arthur and Lancelot and Bors and all of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. It feels accurate. That feels accurate. So, and then right after all of that shows up, the Lady of the Lake shows up again, Nimue, and she's like, by the way, the knight was poisoned by somebody else. It wasn't Guinevere. And they're like, oh.
Could she have not shown up an hour earlier?
So sooner? I don't know. So at this point, things are starting to sort of fall apart a bit for everybody.
Shocker.
The Knights of the Round Table seem more than eager to be pitted against each other. Sir Bors himself is gravely wounds Lancelot, but not knowing it was him. Obviously, there's a lot of mistaken identity injuries. Also, Guinevere is constantly like attacking Lancelot for misunderstandings, and then Bors is trying to help fix it, and then she wants Lancelot back because she feels bad about the misunderstanding. It's just like the most toxic.
Maybe Arthur has let this all go for as long as it has because he's like, somebody else is dealing with that.
Maybe.
He's just off in his room, like, doing miniatures or something. He's got some kind of hobby.
Yeah.
And he hears screaming down, and he goes, oh, there's Guinevere again, getting another person murdered.
But it does say that, like, through all of this, apparently he did not know that Lancelot and Guinevere were having an affair.
Yeah, he is the stupidest man.
Yeah. So then, Agravain and Mordred show up, and they tell Arthur about the affair. And Arthur is very reluctant to believe them, because Lancelot is his most trusted knight, and Guinevere is his wife. And so they're like, here's a plan. We're going to do a setup. And Agravain and Mordred, along with 12 other knights, are going to hide in the queen's chamber until Lancelot shows up. And the king is like, all right. So...
Seems the easier thing would be for Arthur to just show up pretending to be Lancelot.
Yeah.
And see how Guinevere treats him.
Yeah.
You know?
Brandon, you're not thinking axe copying enough.
Yeah. We need 13 fully armored knights hiding behind the curtains, clanking away.
There's one like under the bed.
Yeah,
like,
just waiting for Lancelot to come in and say something unambiguous like, we should probably get busy with the intercourse now. And then they jump out and go,
That was a conversation.
Good callback. Not that kind of intercourse.
So Lancelot shows up at the queen's chamber, and the knights are like, we gotcha. And so he kisses her, and he says, if he's killed, go to Bors and this other knight, Ure, and they'll take care of her. So he fights these knights, and Lancelot is not in his armor, and he doesn't have any weapons, because he wasn't going there to fight.
Or was he?
But because he's such an amazing knight, he kills barehanded this first knight that gets him, and then he takes his sword. And so he's, threatening them, and then he says that he, to stop them, that he'll go in the morning to be properly charged for treason if they leave. And Agravain and Mordred didn't want to wait, and they attack, and Lancelot wounds Agravain. He wounds Mordred and kills Agravain and all the rest of the knights. And then but Mordred gets away. And then he tells Guinevere that he must now be Arthur's enemy, and he's got to leave, but he'll try and rescue Guinevere. Which I was like, rescue her? Like,
she should just leave with
just
you.
Leave. Just go. But he doesn't. He leaves her there. So then Lancelot goes and tells Bors what happened, and that essentially they should be prepared for civil war. And Bors is like, yeah, a lot of the knights are actually on your side, Lancelot. No, they don't really have a lot of, what is that? Loyalty to King Arthur or to Guinevere.
He should have made that one of his rules.
He should have. And so Mordred rides to Arthur and tells him what happened, and Arthur cries that the round table is broken forever and that Guinevere must be put to death. So then Gawain asks Arthur to grant mercy, and that maybe there is a harmless reason why Lancelot was in the chambers. So don't fly off the handle yet, have a conversation.
Oh my gosh.
It might have been harmless, and he only killed 12 of them.
Oh, nice. So Arthur tells Gawain, Gaheris, and Harith to prepare Guinevere for the fire.
Can't even do it himself.
Yeah. And they refuse to participate because they think that Arthur is being a little too hot-headed and, making calls a little too quickly. So then Lancelot's squire, who has been spying on this whole thing, is like, oh dang, the queen's about to get burned. I gotta go tell Lancelot. So he goes and tells Lancelot, and then Lancelot charges in and kills a ton of knights, including Gaheris and Harith, who were 2 of the 3 people that were refusing to participate and weren't armed and had no armor on. So they were essentially innocent bystanders. And then Lancelot takes Guinevere and rides away. And at this point, Gawain, who is the brother of Gaheris, and then, Harith is there too, I guess. But it's Gaheris, his brother, that's just been murdered by Lancelot. He's like, I swear an oath that either me or Lancelot are going to die, because I am not letting this go. And so...
He just killed like 40 people.
Yeah, he did, single-handedly.
Which one of you is going to die?
So then they all take off for a battle at Lancelot's castle. And it's kind of sad, like knights that had been brothers just recently are all fighting each other. It really is kind of a Camelot civil war happening here. And the Pope gets involved, and the Pope shows up. And gets
Another
involved.
axe cop twist there.
Yeah.
And then the Pope shows up in the Pope-mobile.
And he gets involved, and he asks the sides to make peace, but Gawain will not have it. But Lancelot is like, okay, I will bring Arthur Guinevere in 8 days. And so he does so, and again asks for peace between Gawain and Lancelot. And Lancelot even says that he wished that he had never come to this realm, since it is ending the way that it is. And Gawain says that he'll never make peace with Lancelot. So Lancelot and his people, they all go to France, and they start kind of doing their thing in France. But that doesn't end.
Doing their thing in France. Is this why the French people are stereotypically somewhat...
lovers, not fighters?
Yes.
They all come from the line of Lancelot.
Yeah. That's where they get it?
Yeah. But that doesn't actually end the fight. And so there's more pressure. Gawain is putting more pressure for them to fight. And they start a battle with Lancelot and his people. And the battle lasts for half a year. And then finally, Gawain and Lancelot meet in battle. And it is a super intense battle. And for a while, it looks like Gawain, with the aid of a holy relic, is going to beat Lancelot.
Which holy relic? Is it that spear?
It didn't say.
Oh,
just a holy relic. Yeah.
I feel like other holy relics wouldn't be as useful as a spear.
As a spear. Yeah. it's true. And so it looked like he was going to win, but in the end, Lancelot strikes down Gawain.
No.
But he doesn't kill him. He just mortally wounds him. And Gawain demands that Lancelot kill him. And then Lancelot says, I will never kill a fallen knight, and then just walks away. Probably into the sunset or some lady or something.
Into the sunset or some lady. It's probably into some lady.
Yeah, something.
Knowing Lancelot like we do.
And
I'm doing this for you, Guinevere.
Yeah. Exactly. So while all of this is going on, Mordred writes a fake letter to Guinevere. This is just... So it feels so convoluted, and I tried to make it as clear as possible. But while all this is going on, Mordred writes a fake letter to Guinevere that Arthur is dead, and he demands that Guinevere marry him so that he can become queen. And she has
become king?
So that he can become king, sorry. And she has no choice but to agree. And so she agrees, but then she sneaks away and hides in the Tower of London. So Mordred lays siege to the tower itself to try and get to Guinevere. And the Bishop of Canterbury is like, you can't be doing this because she's your aunt. And he's like, it doesn't matter, I'm going to be king. And so he threatens to kill the bishop, who then flees. And then
And the bishop and the pope are like, let's get out of here.
yeah, they take off. They're not heard from again for a while. But Arthur hears about this and is like, time out, everybody at Lancelot Castle. Time out.
Lancelot Castle.
Yeah, Lancelot
What a
has a
place.
castle. Yeah. And so they all time out. And in the battle, Gawain, like he's able to get back, I guess. It's kind of, again, convoluted. But in that battle, where Gawain was injured by Lancelot, he didn't die. He just was super severely wounded. Mm-hmm. And that's when he tells Lancelot to kill him, but he won't. But he makes it back to Arthur. And so, because he's back with Arthur, he decides that he's going to fight with Arthur, even though he's super wounded. But then while he's fighting, he gets wounded on that same place where he was wounded previously. So he knows he's about to die. So he writes a letter to Lancelot that Gawain does, that his death is his own fault and that Lancelot should return to Camelot to pray for his soul. And then he dies and Arthur is really sad. And then that night, the night that Gawain dies, Arthur has a vision and Gawain comes to him and says, if Arthur fights Mordred tomorrow, Arthur will die. So Arthur knows that he needs to wait till Lancelot gets there to fight. So Arthur tries to create a peace, like a little month-long truce with Mordred. And Mordred is actually willing to sign it. But it is this really high tense thing. And both sides, Mordred's side and Arthur's side, all of their men are like, strung bows. Like they're ready to just snap at anything. And so both sides are like, if you see a sword, if you see anything iffy from one side, just attack at this like peace treaty signing. Mm-hmm. And so there's a knight that's standing there.
It's Merlin.
It's no, it's another thing where I'm like, this is so whatever. Anyways, so as they're about to sign the treaties, an adder snake comes out of nowhere and bites a knight that's like in the backside somewhere, and he pulls out his sword to kill the snake. Mm-hmm. And so Mordred's soldiers seize the sword.
They go, he's got a snake. Get him.
And they're like, his sword! And they start the battle. And so both sides immediately start fighting. And Mordred and Arthur fight a really intense battle. And Mordred is run through by Arthur. And as Arthur runs him through with Excalibur, Mordred lands a blow on Arthur's head. And Arthur falls mortally wounded. And Arthur is like, none of this would have happened if I waited for Lancelot. And then everything ends because both Mordred's dead and Arthur is essentially out of commission. So the battle's sort of over. I'm not sure how it's solved, but it's over. And so there's this other knight that's with Arthur. His name is Bedivere. And Arthur instructs Bedivere to take Excalibur and throw it into the lake. And so Bedivere says it'll do that, but then takes the sword and is like, this will be a huge waste. I'll hide it behind this tree. So he hides it behind a tree. He goes back to Arthur and he's like, it's done. And Arthur's like, really? What did you see? And he's like, just water and waves. And Arthur's like, then you are a liar. Take it back and throw it in the water. And he's like, okay. And he goes out there and he kind of stands for a little bit and then comes back. And Arthur's like, did you do it? And he's like, yeah. He's like, what'd you see? He's just water and waves. He's like, don't lie to me. Throw the sword in the water. So finally, the third time, Bedivere actually does it. And an arm emerges out of the water and catches Excalibur and then disappears with the sword. And then when he returns to Arthur, he tells the story. And Arthur's like, good job. And then there's a barge that appears with a whole bunch of fair maidens in black hoods. And Bedivere puts Arthur in the barge.
I think your boat's here, sir. All these ladies leaning over the top. Oh, I know.
And sends the barge away. And that is the end of Arthur's life.
The end of Arthur's story is load him on the barge full of ladies.
Well, it's not quite the end of the story, but it's the end of his life. The narrator of the stories does explain to us that there are some theories that he was not actually killed, but he was kept alive by the grace of God, and that he'll come back again. And there's another story that there's a tomb, and written in Latin, it says, "Here lies Arthur, once and future king." So he kind of is like, maybe he didn't float off in a barge dead. And then Guinevere learns that Arthur is actually dead this time. And so she leaves to become a nun. And because she feels like she needs to do penance.
If I'm not cheating, I'm not sleeping.
She's like, it's no fun with Arthur dead anymore. Okay, I thought, what was the name of the guy?
Benevere.
Benevere. And so he gets him to throw the sword in, and then he goes, okay, now I need you to go and burn my wife at the stake. And then he goes out there, and he's like, this seems like a waste. And he comes back, and he's like, what did you see? It just flames and fire. And he's like, no,
liar.
Go back. Burn her for real this time.
That would have been amazing, but no. Instead, she goes to be a nun. And then Lancelot comes and sees all of this has happened, and he's like real sad, but then he goes to find Guinevere, because he's Lancelot. And he shows up, and she asks him to leave because she never wants to see him again, because she wants to spend the rest of her life in penance. And so he does so. And many of the knights of this realm and of this time actually become men of the cloth it says for 6 years. They do penance for 6 years, I guess. And then after a while, Lancelot receives a vision that he must go to Almesbury to bury Guinevere because she has died. So Almesbury is the place where she became a nun. So he goes, and she actually did die. So he takes her to Glastonbury, where Arthur is buried, so that he can bury the two of them together.
Wait, who does this?
Lancelot.
I don't know why this is so fun. And doesn't the cross in the story say these two, whatever?
Yeah, with his second wife, yeah. And so he does, and then he's really sad, and he's crying and wailing, and the bishop chastises Lancelot for grieving so much. And Lancelot says that he can't help it, because when he thinks of Guinevere and her beauty and how noble she and Arthur were, he can't help but feel bad about his own pride and the sins that he committed. And because of this, he grows weak, because he decides to stop eating and to stop drinking. And after 6 weeks, he becomes ill and then dies. And then the bishop that was caring for him is found... This is insane. He's found laughing at Lancelot's side, and they ask him why, and the bishop explains that angels came down and carried Lancelot away personally because he was such a true and righteous knight.
Oh boy.
And that's the end of the tale.
Righteous.
And so here is kind of swinging back to the archaeologists and that kind of stuff. So remember Arthur Raleigh Radford, who was kind of picking up where Blybond left off, and he started to look into the stories from the monks and was like, I don't know if this is real. I don't know if these monks actually found bodies or a cross or Excalibur's sword, for sure, the sword Excalibur. Because none of those things can be found. And even though in the stories, there's some stories where I think it was King Edward III, he claimed that he went and got Excalibur and was going around the countryside with Excalibur. He even named his son Arthur and planned for him to have the sword or something like that. And but the son Arthur died when he was a teenager, so he never had it. And then they just don't know what happened to Excalibur. But essentially what Arthur Raleigh Radford started doing was sort of pulling the thread of this story from these monks. And it turned out that during this time that the monks, quote unquote, found Arthur and these relics. Glastonbury Abbey was in competition with another abbey, and they were not receiving funds that they needed, and they were broke. And a way to make money was to have relics in your abbey. And even though Arthur was not a saint, he was incredibly well known. So much so that many kings used fake ties to Arthur to sort of bolster their own reputation. So like real living kings faked ties to try and make it seem that they were connected to King Arthur. Even so much so that there in Winchester, like I said earlier, there's actually a round table that is hanging on the wall, and it's from the medieval era. And it's likely King Edward the First, maybe, actually had it made, and then Henry VIII painted himself on it later, depicted as Arthur. And they all use these things to like make them seem more legitimate kings. So essentially, everybody that was connecting themselves to these stories were using it as a way to get influence, power, or monetary gain. Like the monks were essentially just making up that they had this relic here to try and save the abbey from going under. And so it all sort of fell apart. And they don't have any archaeological evidence that supports that there really was a real King Arthur. And what historians believe, potentially, if there is any truth to a king named Arthur, there may have been a King Arthur, like a man that was a king and his name was Arthur. But most likely what happened is it's a collection of stories from many different kings and many different places that's sort of turned into this embellishment that they all attributed to this one single person that sort of became this legend that is King Arthur. Because again, they just don't have any real evidence of any of these stories that were true. But the impact that these stories had was so like tangible that like real kings that we do have archaeological evidence and documentation and portraits and whatever, we know they were real, used a fake connection or used any kind of connection they could with King Arthur to make themselves more than they were before, which I think is so interesting. And I think kind of, taps back into what you were talking about at the beginning. So there we go.
Listen, I think it was all fanfic.
I mean, maybe.
It is funny that, like, I suppose it's like something is better than nothing, right? If they can be like, listen, Arthur's popular with the people, and I want to be popular with the people, so I'll be like, look at me, I'm just, right?
Yeah.
But then you hear the actual stories, and you're like, these are terrible stories, and they don't cast the royalty in a particularly flattering light.
Yeah, like really you should distance yourself from them.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, a lot of the stories, like legitimate stories, usually don't portray,
Inspire.
Royalty in a great light.
Yeah. Here's what I think is really powerful about these stories is, since they aren't the real stories of anybody's real life, we're able to take them and sort of mold them for our needs, our modern needs, and our more modern storytelling sensibilities. So we still get to have this like epic character, because I think most people, like I definitely didn't know most of this. And so most people don't know like these versions of King Arthur, but they do know the things that have lasted, which is that he was this remarkable, valiant person that brought together nations, and it was this sort of magical thing. And I think that we've sort of made him more chivalrous than he was, but he has those things tied to him now. So now we can create stories that are more applicable and still impactful to us, that have this sort of magic of a time that was so long ago that we can kind of dream that maybe it was real, I know King Arthur wasn't real, but I still fully believe dragons existed for sure.
I don't know. Like, for me, what's funny is the terribleness of the people serves the purposes of the royalty because they believe in the divine right of kings, right? they're like, yeah, we should rule over you because God's chosen us. And they were not always good people. In fact, they were often terrible people. Mm-hmm. So having an ancient king where the whole story is like, everybody's awful, but what are you going to do? You got a sword from a lady in a lake. Like, you can't make that stuff up, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I wonder if there's something that was even that they maybe liked about that, because even like when Balin was like, well, if it's God's will that I kill my most beloved brother, person that I know, then I guess that's God's will. So maybe it was encouraging that even kings were subject to this power that these
it legitimizes their rule.
Yeah.
I don't know, right? I don't see the purpose of the stories as they exist. I think that you're probably right, Kelly, that these are a compilation of a bunch of different things that happened to different people and kind of all got shoved together into one set of stories.
And then embellished.
Yeah, and then embellished. I do like what King Arthur became over the centuries, and as it came into a modern time, and what we've made of the stories. Because I can remember growing up and hearing the stories of King Arthur, and it wasn't these wild stories that you've shared with us today. These are, like he was this pillar of virtue and loyalty and chivalry, and the Knights of the Round Table were without question, these men that just do the right thing. And like really a medieval Superman. Yeah. Like Superman he's powerful. He never abuses that power. He's a Boy Scout.
Yeah, they're like the precursors to superheroes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's stories, they've evolved to be what we need them to be. And I think that's something that's very powerful. That a story that we've been telling since, medieval times is still something that our youth grow up learning and loving.
Now, in a couple thousand years, is there going to be a podcast talking about Thanos? And was he real?
Can they find any archaeological evidence? And some guy's like, this is my life's mission. I will find Thanos. We did it. We made it through. Good job, team. And so thank you guys for tuning in. I definitely had fun reading these insane stories. But again, for sure, go do some art, but don't do any crime. And don't do any of these insane things.
They will burn you at the stake.
All right, bye.
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 To do, ladies, damsels, and gentlewomen.
As rough as they ask for it.
Sucker upon.
But no rougher.
Yeah. There's so many jokes I have to cut from this one.
Leave that in. That'll be the end joke.